Aloha, everyone. Michelle Melendez with Blossom Inner Wellness and StandTogetherHawaii.com. And I have two really amazing people as guests today, and I'm really excited to introduce them. Jack and Margy Flynn, founders of Citizens of American Constitution.net. That link is in the description. You've got to check it out if you want to learn about common law and really understand your rights. It's probably one of the best sites I have found myself. And they teach a series on the original organic Constitution for the United States of America, 1787, as amended with the Bill of Rights in 1791. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure.
Very nice to meet you, Michelle.
Thank you. So my first question is, when did you, because you guys have been sharing this and teaching this for a really, really long time. I saw your guys' first video. You said you were teaching it since you were, or learning about it and since you guys were in high school or teenagers. So when did you start realizing something's wrong? Something's wrong with this country?
When we were kids.
When we were small children, okay? I grew up during the Second World War, and I knew something was awfully wrong, okay? Anyone could see that this was not the right way for human beings to act, okay? That is, anyone with any sensibilities. But during the Second World War, a lot of people were keyed on war. Let's go over and kill those Nazis, kill this, kill that, kill everyone in sight. Not the way we should act as human beings. And I saw so many people coming home with no eyes, no faces, burned bodies, no legs, half of their shoulders gone. It was terrible. It was horrible. And I said there had to be a different way to restructure society so we can resolve problems at an ethical, humanitarian nature. Now, the Second World War came about because of the First World War. And I don't know if you folks know the history of the First World War and what happened. Probably a lot of you do, but maybe some of you don't. In the First World War, that war was fought to make the areas in which they were fighting safe for communism, to start communism in those areas, or to, let's say, exacerbate the communism that was already in those areas, to make the world safe for the Jews who run the world and for the central banks. That's the reason for the First World War. Now, communism was established in Russia. Yep. Communism was established in Germany, Italy, and other European points. Well, after the First World War, we had the Second World War. And the Second World War was to make communism safe throughout Europe. All of Europe was communist, all of it, from top to bottom, left to right, south to north, whichever way you want to describe it. It was total communism in Europe, okay? We, the United States of America, made this possible. Well, why would the United States of America make it possible? We're a communist nation. We've been a communist nation since well before the War of Northern Aggression.
Covertly, of course.
Yeah, and most people don't understand this. They have no idea.
Mm-hmm. That's not what we're taught. We're not taught this.
No, we're not taught at all.
We're not taught the truth.
Yeah.
See, the truth is the defense against anything. It's both the defense and offense. But who uses the truth anymore? Well, Margy and I do. Our people do. You do. Other people do. Some people. But the vast majority of people and the vast majority of almost everyone who works for government and governments do not tell the truth. They lie like hell, okay? Because that's the way they are. Now, do we not only establish communism throughout Europe, but we also did it in Asia? China became a communist nation. Korea became a communist nation. Cochin China, which later became Vietnam, was a communist nation, and other other Asian points. So if we take a look at the facts and we take a look at reality and we take a look at truth, communism runs the world. Well, how should it run the world? I mean, it's an idea. But who owns communism? The central banks own communism, okay? They invented communism. And who owns the central banks? The elite Jews, not your average everyday Jew like you have friends, I have Jew friends. We all have Jew friends. They're just ordinary people. We're not talking about those people. We're talking about the elite Jews who
Mhm.
own the central banks throughout the world.
The mega corporations.
And if you own the central banks throughout the world, then you own the world, because money is like gold. I mean, it's the golden rule. It's been perverted. He who has the gold rules.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And those in the central banks have the gold, therefore they rule. They can buy any government, they can buy anyone they want, they can
Yep.
buy any corporation.
And they do.
They own the corporations, they own the economies, they own
They
everything.
own the media, lock, stock,
the
and
media-
Yes, all of the media. What do you think is happening with Israel and Palestine? Because I have told people about the Khazarian mafia. It goes all the way from the Canaanite line all the way down, and so this is these people. But this is the World War III. I mean, these were wars that were put in place. I think it was 150 years before they even started. It was
Yes.
Oh, yeah. A
yeah.
long-range plan.
Yeah.
That's
So
correct.
Way
what
in
is their goal for World War III now with Israel and Palestine?
Well, they want to destroy Palestine completely. They've already stolen most of what was Palestine, and most Jews don't even know that. They think that the Palestinians are trying to take their land, when in fact it was the Jews that took the Palestinians' land, with no lawful and righteous authority to do so. Now they want to completely decimate the rest of the Palestinians so they can put their canal through. There's oil and gas to think about. All sorts of, money, investments, power, control, manipulation of goods and services. All of those things are part and parcel. And unfortunately, the elitists don't care about people. They have no concern for the regular guy at all. We're nothing to them. We're just less than cattle.
Yeah.
The Palestinians, beasts and animals. And they've been lying through their teeth about everything that's happened in Gaza, right across the board. And unfortunately, most Americans don't know this. We've been trying to spread the word, especially letting people know about some of the videos that Max Egan has done. I don't know if you are familiar with Max, but he's a journalist and musician, and was in Palestine about 10 years ago and made a lot of friends there, and is totally outraged at what's going on. And he's been pushing the envelope, every few days with new videos, because of the fact that he knows it's a lie. He knows the Palestinian people are good people. They're peaceful people.
Yeah.
They don't want war.
Both sides, Israel and they're just regular people. These people, and they're unarmed.
Well, yeah, the Palestinians are unarmed. This really isn't a war, because you have to have two armies, two armed groups to have a war. And Hamas has very little in the way of armaments. There's no way that they could have pulled off the so-called attack on Israel. Israel did that. It was a false flag.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they do this all the
And the
time.
Israel people, they know this. They know this. I've seen some of their videos.
Some of the Israeli people are trying to, make the pitch. You guys, we know you fake this, stop it, but they're not listening, because the agenda is so evil. And the rest of the young Jews have been brainwashed into thinking that the Palestinians are evil, want their land, and they're bad people, so they have to die. So there's a real disconnect between what's really going on and what people think is going on. And to make matters worse, in this country and other countries as well, a lot of people think that the Jews are in the right here. They think they have the moral high ground, and there's absolutely no moral high ground.
Because of this Bible that they remember, the Bible that was put out. It was actually put out by the Catholic Church, by the Jewish people. It's like, I'm not just people, but the elitists.
You're talking about
Yeah.
the Bible.
Yes, I am. Yeah, Sheffield Bible. Yeah.
The Jews look as though they're the saviors, and where the whole terminology of Judeo-Christian came from, which is ridiculous. It's an oxymoron.
It's all part of the plan. It's just lined up for that.
Whatever they've done, look at what's going on with immigration, the Kalergi plan. You probably heard about that too.
What was that?
The Kalergi plan, written up by a Jew who decided that it would be good to invade all of the white countries with immigrants from foreign countries, people of color, so that they could basically upend the society, destabilize it, overwhelm it, and it would be a contributing factor in moral decay and financial decay and all the things that you do to ruin a stable society, so that you can basically invoke and insert and impose communism. And that's what they've done. If you look around the world, that's what's going on right now.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's across the board, and they're not going to stop unless the people of the individual countries stand up and say, hell no, we're not going to take this crap.
And they are.
And we're not going to let you take us over. And so far, the people in this country anyway are still asleep at the switch.
These people are, yes.
Yeah,
but I've seen other countries where the people are standing up.
Yeah, well, they're
And
marching in the streets, but you know,
yes,
it hasn't had any impact on their governments. Millions of people have been marching with signs, supporting the Palestinians, and the media turns it into, oh, they're supporting terrorists and Hamas. Well, I hate to tell you, but Israel created Hamas, buying through effects with our CIA. So they would have a government, quote unquote, that they could manipulate and control, have their little temporary excursions every now and then to make it look like Israel would be justified in keeping all these defenses and attacking the borders and all this nonsense. It's been a lie from the beginning. And right
yeah,
now, people are suffering. God knows how many people have died in Palestine.
and
And
children.
children, there's 45% of the population or more are children under 14 years old. No guns, nothing, and no future. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And if you look at Max Egan's website, which is the Crow House. You can go onto the Crow House, and he has multiple platforms. I usually use the Odyssey one. There are a number of videos that he's done in the last month or so that really lay out what's going on. There was actual footage from Gaza shot by real people with their phones that were still working, and it'll stun you, believe me. And I
I'll
hope
put the link in the description
a
for
lot of
people.
your viewers will go and look for it because they really need to see for themselves. It's one thing to hear us say something. It's another thing for them to see with their own eyes what's actually going on, see the suffering that's going on. I mean, Israel's attacking hospitals. They're attacking aid
There
workers.
are refugee camps. Like, oh my gosh, like it makes
Justify
me,
that.
it just turns my stomach. And yeah,
It's
so we're
Israel.
at war. This is like a spiritual war with this evilness and this light, because I truly believe that there is a light within each one of us.
Oh, yes.
And you guys, you have been doing the original organic constitution. I do want to share with people what that is, because we need to take back. I love how you guys on your homepage literally state that, we have to take back this country. It's not just about what each individual needs are for our personal life. It's about our country.
That's
right.
correct. That's right.
Can you talk about the original organic constitution? How does it differ from what we have? Because how in the world did a corporation get to rule this country? Like,
Well, and
how'd they do it?
they did it by sleight of
Well,
hand.
before we get into that, I just want to say a few more things to wrap up what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
It's an absolute abomination that's
absolutely.
taking place by the Jews against the Palestinians. It's not against Hamas.
No.
Hamas is a puppet of Israel, always
As I
has
said.
been, just like
Yes.
Hezbollah is in Lebanon,
And ISIS
puppet of
too.
Israel. Just like the United States government, we call it the Jew-United States government because
Run by the
it's
Jews.
run by the Jews. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it. The
Yeah.
Jews run almost everything in this country. I'm talking about the elite Jews.
The
not
elite, the
ordinary
Orthodox Jews, and they've actually done it too, because they thought, like, Rothschild, he is the main head honcho for the money for the Black Pope, and they thought, oh, who's gonna think that an Orthodox Jew is running the Catholic Church, is running the
They
Black
have for a
Pope for
long
the
time.
Jesuits?
For a long time, they run the world. And I'll tell you something that a lot of people might not have considered. Many of you might have heard of the Balfour Declaration, okay? During World War One, which the Kaiser did not want at all.
Yes, that's right.
The Kaiser, okay, and the Tsar of Russia and the King of England were all first cousins. They didn't want war.
Yeah.
2 weeks before the war started, they met on common ground and they shook hands and declared no war. It was the Jews and the central bankers who wanted the war. And the Jews and central bankers control those nations, control the politics of those nations. So 2 weeks later, there was war. Germany won every battle on the land, the air, the sea, under the sea, everywhere. They won every battle, every major battle. They might have lost a few skirmishes here and there, but every major battle in 2 years. And they were slaughtering their opponents. They were slaughtering the Brits. So the Kaiser said, no, this is insanity. We have to stop this. And a good friend of ours knew the Kaiser very well. The Kaiser was a nice man, okay?
Wow.
I had family in Germany at that time. They knew the Kaiser. They claimed he was a very nice man. He was a peaceful man. He was a man of peace. He was not a man of war. He was a man of business, okay, as a lot of government leaders are. But he was a man who wanted peace. He said, this is enough. We'll go to England, present a peace treaty. No reparations from England at all. No payments to us at all. We will stop. We will shake hands. We'll go back to business. as it was before. Okay. The English government was seriously considering this.
Mhm.
Well, who comes in? The elite Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. And they said, no, we don't want this to happen. So they made their own proposal to the English government and said, if you do not accept this proposal from the Kaiser, do not accept the peace, we will guarantee you that we will get America into the war and you will devastate Germany. And that's exactly what happened. Now, what was the agreement? Because the Jews wanted something as well. They were giving something by getting America into the war. They wanted something. They wanted Palestine. And the Balfour Agreement gave them Palestine. So the Jews have
right.
caused every major war that we have had in the last 400 years, and every major war we have had in this country, including the Revolutionary War.
Yes, correct. Very
We're,
correct.
we're constitutionalists. We believe in the Constitution. We also believe in truth. And there was infiltration from the Jews in the very beginning of this country. Okay.
Yes.
And that infiltration came through the first president, their president, George Washington.
He was a Mason.
Yes,
Yes. And he was not elected by the Electoral College. Adams was. But Adams was a man of the people. He didn't please the Jews. He didn't please the power structure. So there was a second Electoral College. It's never happened before. And all of a sudden, Washington is president. And what happens? The first central bank was a Jew-controlled, Rothschild-controlled central bank in 1791. And we've had central banks in this country ever since in one form or another. So we have to place the problem and we have to place the blame at those who caused the problem, and that was the Jews. If they didn't do this to England,
The elites who are, and that's not even their religion they have. They're Satanists, evil, Luciferian, murdering.
Exactly.
It's a cover.
It's a total cover.
But we have to recognize that they're the ones who created the First World War, the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, all these other wars we've had in America. And for the past 400 years, every major war in this world has been a Jew war, even in the Orient. They control everything. They control our Congress lock, stock, and barrel.
Yes.
They control Trump. They control
They
Biden.
control everybody. Yes, I agree.
Everyone.
Everybody, you guys.
We call this
We're listening to this.
USA, and we have to recognize who the problem is. The problem is the Jews. Okay.
The elitists, the elitist
the
Jews who
elite
call
Jews.
themselves Jews, who are, they come from an evil line from the beginning of time, from the Canaanites, the Canaanite line. And I actually am going to do a whole map of explaining it so that people can really just have it written down. First of all, I love what you guys are doing because I mean, like I said, I haven't really seen it done the way the education of the original organic constitution. So but I go back to my question. When this country turned into a corporation, there's two different constitutions, isn't that right? So can you talk a little bit about that? One's are the original and then the second constitution.
To be clear, okay, both constitutions say almost exactly the same thing.
The intent is different.
But the intent between the two of them is different. The first one, which is the organic original constitution, was a guarantee of how this country was going to be formed, how the government would be run, what the authority was going to be. And it limited the authority and power that government would have over the people. And the Bill of Rights, of course, which was added in 1791, was imperative because that made sure that the rights of the people were going to be upheld. There was a debate and a lot of argumentation between some of the so-called founding fathers. The ones who were the Kingsmen did not want the Bill of Rights because they wanted to have more control over the people. And I think they were well aware that over time people would get lazy and lax and sort of tune into their day-to-day life and not think about overseeing government, which is our responsibility as the government. So their prophecies proved to be correct because they don't hedge their bets too badly. They're pretty smart about how things go. They have a lot of insight into human nature. And I think there's reasons for that too, which I won't get into now. But the bottom line is in 1871, the Congress, which had already taken an oath to the original organic constitution, created another constitution, and they changed the name from the Constitution for the United States of America to the Constitution of the United States. That is a corporate constitution for the corporate government, which is run out of DC, which is not part of the United States. It's a separate entity, just like the Vatican is a separate entity from Italy, and the City of London is a separate entity from London proper, okay? So it's part of this triad, if you will, of evil, and we're the enforcement part of that. After the Corporate Act, and just prior to it, some changes were made, okay? Prior to that, they took out the original 13th Amendment, which prohibited any titles of nobility and did not allow for lawyers to hold public officials, okay? Office, that's right. I've seen the original 13th, and it doesn't permit lawyers to hold public positions. But of course, the lawyers changed that because they are the manipulators. They're the mouthpieces whose actions have twisted and turned things to the point that most people have no idea what's going on in their own country or even in their own local communities. They just don't get it. So that switched things around. And subsequent to that, other acts were passed that created municipal governments, corporate governments that are under the corporation of DC. So they're like separate under a territorial government, and they operate under the law of the sea, or admiralty law. And we're supposed to be operating under the Constitution on the land. So we identify ourselves as living, breathing, flesh and blood, men and women on the land. We're American citizens, with and claiming our inherent unalienable rights secured for us in the national and our state constitution. We're not US citizens, a la the 14th Amendment. We are not municipal citizens. We are not vessels. We are not corporate fictions. We are living, breathing souls. So we separated ourselves from the fiction, the fraud. And a lot of people have gone through great lengths to become state nationals and this and that, and we don't do that because we know that anything that's conducted under fraud is a nullity. And everything that was done subsequent to that 1871 Constitution and just before it was done unconstitutionally, was done in fraud without disclosure. Therefore, it is vitiated by the fraud. So it's very simple. You have to know who you are. You have to know what your true status as a living, breathing man or woman is, that you are on the land, which is the United States of America. That is our country. Washington, D.C. is not our country. It's not even really a legitimate government for us anymore because it's a business. It operates in commerce. And unfortunately, all of the governments and all of the so-called courts in this country operate in commerce too. And they operate for profit, and they're registered on Dun & Bradstreet. They all have corporate ID numbers, and there's no authority granted in the original Constitution for this to happen. Remember, the Constitution is a simple document. It's written in English, doesn't need any interpretation. It says what it means what it says. And if something is not written in there, then there is no authorization for that action to take place. And anytime an action is committed by any aspect of government without constitutional authority, the action is void. It's a nullity. That's what people have to remember, because this illusion of authority, when we have given our power away to the idea of authority, is a lie. And we have to face the fact that it is a lie. And we have to say, how do we get back to the simple aspects of really governing ourselves? We're supposed to be a self-governing nation. But see, self-governance is not a spectator sport. You have to participate. You have to be on board with that responsibility. And the American people just did not get that. They thought that.
I think it's kind of the programming too with that, because they've set us up. So they've programmed people so much to get the big house, get the car, and just be in debt and be slaves to, working 40, 50 hours a week, that they don't have time to actually look at what the heck is going on with the legislative body.
Keeping people busy chasing material things that are going to be impermanent in the long run is how they have taken our consciousness away from who and what we are and brought us into the state of being debt slaves. And virtually everyone in this country is a debt slave because they're still paying the man. And the economic violence that's been really thrust upon everyone in this country for a long, long time is despicable. And again,
Yeah.
the elite Jews, the international Jews, the owners of the central banks, all the big corporations, they are the ones that profit. People have no idea how things have been
Hugely.
lied to and defrauded, how their wealth has been stolen from them, and they're going to do it again. They,
Yeah.
they have their little cycles and their little ups and downs, and they create all of them. None of them are natural. None of them have to happen. They all are manipulated because every time these things happen, they steal more wealth from people. And they're getting ready to do another big one again, and people have to be aware and they have to be on guard. They have to be able to take.
What do you think is coming? Because I was going to read this at the end, but you have in a constitutional republic such as America, every state is guaranteed a Republican form of government pursuant to Article 4, Section 4. This means that the government operates under the rule of law and not the rule of man. So I'd love for you to talk about that. But then the next thing is that all legislative laws, which you just kind of hit on, must be constitutionally compliant, specific to the Bill of Rights, or they're null and void without lawful force and effect. What do you think is coming? Because these mandates, like I stood up against them and I took the police chief to complained to the police commissioner against the police chief and his 4 cronies that tried to intimidate me and 3 of my friends with because we were going in without a mask and we weren't, medically exempt, which is actually Exhibit J of the emergency proclamation. But regardless of that, I have a right to breathe fresh air.
That's right.
And so, but he ended up retiring 2 months later. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not.
I think it
But
did.
what do you think is coming? Because those mandates were not laws, and people need to understand mandates are not laws. You cannot mandate free people.
That's
No, you
correct.
can't. There's nothing that permits any public official from issuing a mandate that violates the rights of the people. And that was proven when Joe Biden tried to mandate all of these government contractors and employees and companies to make their people take the shot. We got inundated with emails and calls from people who were worried about losing their jobs, but they didn't want to take that shot. So we said, look, we'll put together a draft of an affidavit that you can then customize for yourself. We'll put a lot of information in it that supports why the shot is not a good idea, not just for you, but for everybody. And then it's up to you to personalize it, but you'll be holding your company and the CEOs and the manager, whoever's forcing your hand to uphold your rights, or they are violating those rights, and that's a crime. So we put it together, and a lot of people sent it out, and it was kind of interesting because one of our students who happened to work for the airlines was really upset because his airline was saying, if you don't take the shot, then we're going to fire you. And he said, I don't want to get fired. He was just like a year or so away from being able to retire. And he didn't want to take the shot. He said, what do we do? And I said, look, you guys do this. So he took the affidavit and he spread it out through his airline and through other airlines too. We got calls from people that were working for city governments, state governments, all kinds. What can we do? So we said the same thing. Take the affidavit, write it to the person in authority, and go for it, because every position in here is true and factual. It's going to support you. Well, about 2 weeks or so after this fellow got the affidavit and spread it around the airlines, Southwest Airlines, which was really kind of rabid about their mandate, unexpectedly, for no reason given, just took the mandate away. No more requirements for shots and all that other nonsense. Right after that, Delta did, and then America did. And I think that it happened because they got scared, because we showed these people how to hold their corporation, their bosses, accountable for their actions. And believe me, the liability factor was big, because lawyers don't like liability. That's the first thing they look for. And we made it very clear how they would be liable, because they're acting on a mandate that's not even lawful. So they're acting without any lawful authority whatsoever. So whatever happens to your employees, workers, because of your actions is going to come right down on you. And I think that turned the trick.
And you guys have won that. I mean, I was reading your page, and you've won lawsuits with common law. Can you describe that? Because Margy, you won a lawsuit against a major holding company.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
That was Metro.
Before we get into that,
Yeah.
okay, let's finish up on this. This affidavit we did for the airline industry, but a lot of industries across the country started doing what the airlines did. Margy said Southwest, Delta, American, then other airlines followed. Corporations all across the country followed, okay? So I think from what we understand, our affidavit got out there very wide or very long.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe millions and millions of people. We can't guarantee it, but I think that's what happened, okay? So many people were dropping the mandate, so many corporations were dropping their mandate that it went to the Supreme Court about 3 or 4 months later, and the Supreme Court outlawed the mandate as unconstitutional. Well,
I remember that.
anyone who knows the law like you do knows it's unconstitutional. It has no lawful force or effect whatsoever. It's something that you can agree with if you want, but there's no requirement for you to agree with a mandate. It has no constitutional force or effect. So that's very important. We have to understand our rights. If we don't understand our rights in America, we don't have them. So
we don't have, absolutely, we don't have them. That's so true. So if you guys are watching this, and I want to go back also to what you think is coming, that's going to be later, but let's talk about your guys' wins, because one of my friends is like, well, who wins with this common law, Michelle? What happens, you know, because how do we go to court and how do we win with this? And so, but you've won many times.
We and our people have won thousands of cases over the years. Thousands.
Decades. Yeah, we've been doing
over
this
the
a long
decades.
time.
We've been doing this. I've been doing it since 1952, and Margy's been doing it since the late 50s. So we're long in the teeth in this. Okay.
Oh, I'm so behind. But I love this. I'm so glad to have found you guys.
Well, thank you. We've got people all over the country who are still using our methods, and people in the past. Like I say, as far as we know, and we can't guarantee this, but we think we're the only group in the country that has won more cases than any law firm, any trust, any organization, any foundation, anyone, okay? Based in the power and the authority of the Constitution. Now, this is not all us, but this is us and our people. And we've had people all over the country who've been very successful for the past 70 odd years, okay? We wish the American people would be more cognizant of the realities that affect them, okay? Because we just said it a while ago, if you don't know your rights, and you repeated it, if you don't know your rights in America, you don't have any. And the people don't know their rights. Now, we don't call the Constitution the common law. It is a common law, but we do not call it the common law because everyone has a different definition of the common law. So everything we do is constitutional. And Margy, why don't you describe that case?
Okay. Before I do that, I want to say one more thing. In addition to knowing your rights, you really have to really know the limitations that the Constitution imposes upon every single aspect of government. Remember what I said earlier? If they don't have constitutional authority, they have no authority. So when they throw a statute at you or some ordinance about mowing your lawn or whatever, those things infringe upon your rights. And the Constitution supersedes the authority of any ordinance or statute or code. All of those things are corporate and administrative in nature. They do not fall under what you would call constitutional or the common law. They are outside of that because they're in the admiralty commercial jurisdiction. So we stay away from that, but you have to know that the Constitution is the top dog. That's the ultimate authority in this country. It's the supreme law of the land. And every public official is supposed to take an oath to uphold that Constitution and hold it superior to any other lesser law, including state law, federal law, county law, what have you. And even the Constitution itself, if the Constitution's amendments subsequently oppose or violate any aspect of the original, and many of them do. But anyway, let's get to the Metris case.
Well, let me just say to this, Jack, I was watching your video of when you said, you know, the first thing when you go into court, you ask the judge, will you and the prosecutor uphold your oath to defend and support the Constitution? And that is so, you guys, if you're going to court, that was amazing. This video is on their homepage. I think it was on your homepage. But it was really good. Just that one question, because if you ask that and he says yes, he has to abide by the Constitution, and he can't say no because then he's going to
That's
be
right.
booted out. So it was
Exactly.
fantastic. But
Actually,
yes,
what we do is we make a statement to the judge. You and opposing counsel have taken oaths, blah, blah, blah. And you have to abide by them in the performance of your official duties. Is that correct? And if he's not a moron, he's going to say, well, yeah. I say, okay. Good. Once he says that, we brought him under the Constitution, under Article 3, because that's where a matter that's a civil matter between civil people, not military, is supposed to be heard. And the trick here is for the person who is standing in this courtroom to know when the judge strays beyond the scope of his oath. This is what people don't understand. And that's why we speak of authority. Judges come on like they have unlimited authority. No, they don't. They have limited delegated authority that they get by and through the people through the Constitution. We are the bosses. We have a right to expect and demand that our public officials will uphold their oaths. That's a right that is secured in the Ninth Amendment, which is all of the unenumerated rights. Of course, we have a right to expect that our public officials are going to uphold their oaths. And if they don't, we have a duty and a responsibility to remove them from office for failure to uphold their oath. That's perjury. That's where sections 3 and 4 of the 14th Amendment come in. Because any public officer who's taken an oath and then purges that oath by acting in an unconstitutional manner, doesn't matter how, but if he's unconstitutional in his actions, he vacates his office upon the commission of that act, and he forfeits his former benefits of the office, including salaries and pensions. He's no longer fit to hold office, and he's constitutionally prohibited from receiving public funds. Very simple. We call it the constitutional remedy for constitutional violations. That's something people need to know. And again, if you take our course, you'll see where this fits in and how it works. But
the course is in the description, you guys. The course will be in the description. Just click on the link because I'm starting to go through it. It's pretty amazing.
To get to the Metris case, very simply put, I don't like credit or credit cards, but at one point in time, I did have a credit card because I was doing a lot of traveling and I needed it for tickets and that type of thing. And I paid my monthly bill religiously, good doobie that I am. And one month I get a bill from my credit card company that says that I'm getting a late fee and I'm behind a payment, and that they have upped my interest rate by like 18 points or something. I said, what the heck is this? I paid that on time. So I call the company, and of course I go through multiple prompts before I finally get a living person. And then that woman says, this is policy. And I said, I need to speak to a supervisor because this isn't going to work for me. So she brings this other woman on board, and she starts giving me the same spiel. I said, look, I heard what your associate had to say, but it doesn't apply to me because I wasn't late in my payment. I said, I have my receipts here when I mailed it and everything. So you should have gotten it before the due date. And so she hesitated and she hemmed and hawed. And finally she said, well, the thing is, we changed the posting date for your account. And I said, and you didn't notify me? And she had no answer. And I said, I'm asking you, did you notify me? Because I don't recall. I read my statements. There was no notification in there that my posting date was being changed. And if there had been, I would have paid it before the new posting date. She said, well, I don't know if I can do anything for you. I'll take it up with higher management, but I don't know if I can do anything. I said, well, let me put it to you this way. I'm not going to make another payment until this gets resolved to my satisfaction. So you can tell your upper management that don't expect anything from me until this is resolved, and I want it resolved justly. So she said she would do what she could. And I said, I know I'm wasting my breath. Well, I end up getting a letter from them that they're going to sue me. I said, this is going to be fun. So instead of just wringing my hands and saying, what am I going to do? I better pay it. I said, no. I wrote them back and I sent them an affidavit, and I explained what they did wrong and why. And I told them that I wasn't going to be paying any more fees, and I wasn't going to pay any late fee, and I was ripping up my card, and I was never going to do business with them again, which is exactly what I did. So they did not believe that I was going to defend myself against this suit. They sent me a lawsuit. And some of my friends said, well, are you going to get an attorney? I said, no way. I wouldn't trust my fate to an attorney. No offense. I mean, there are a few maybe good attorneys, but most of them are basically liars. and do not represent you. When you bring an attorney into your matter, you're saying to the world, I'm incompetent. I can't speak for
Yes.
myself, and I'm not incompetent. So, long story short, we go through all the procedures, and now it's time to go to court for the preliminary hearing. And the woman attorney who was supposed to represent Metris was supposed to be there in person, but at the last minute, she couldn't make it, so she appeared by phone. And she went through her spiel first because she was the plaintiff, and she was blathering on and on about how they don't want to be difficult and they want to make it easy for me and they'll restructure my payments and on and on and on. And finally, when she was done, the judge turned to me and he said, do you have anything to say? And I said, oh, yeah. And I said, first of all, I said, Metris isn't going to get one dime from me, not one dime. I said, they've perpetrated a fraud against me. I'm not going to stand for it. I don't put up with fraud. She can offer me anything she wants. I'm not going to pay them a dime. So the judge turned back to the phone and he said, well, it looks like we're going to have to go to trial because Miss Edwards isn't willing to accept the terms. So, okay, we'll set this for trial and you'll be notified whenever. And let's let the games begin. So what I did to, I think, really nail the case is we put together requests for admissions when it was time to do discovery, because I didn't want to do depositions and I didn't want to do interrogatories. I didn't have the money or the time or the resources to do it at the time. So I put together requests for admissions that were based on the charges, claims, and statements that I made in my unrebutted affidavits. Okay. And remember,
That's important, you guys. Unrebutted affidavits. Can you explain that just briefly?
Okay, an affidavit is a sworn statement of fact and truth. Okay, when you send it to somebody, you give them a framework within a time frame within to respond. If they disagree with what you've stated, to say support your statements with fact, truth, and law, etc. by within 30 days or whatever. If they don't rebut your affidavit, then they tacitly admit to everything you've stated in it, and the court can take that as evidence, fact, truth. Okay. It's unrebutted, therefore, no one is contradicting you in any way, so your statements stand.
Yeah.
So these people weren't the brightest bulbs, I don't think, anyway. We handed it, actually, we drove down to the attorney's office in Albuquerque because I was living in New Mexico at the time. We took a 2-hour drive down there, and Jack had the pleasure of dropping them off in this woman's office, which was really kind of creepy when he described it to me. And she apparently she took it in, yeah, whatever. And then she realized what she had and she came running out of the building. Remember her with the robes flying?
Yes, I do.
And we were driving out of the parking lot and looking at her like she was a mad woman. Wait a minute. Because she knew that she was screwed. She could not answer any of my statements. Okay. There was nothing that they could do. And with a request for admission, you would either admit or deny a statement that's made to you. And if you deny it, you have to provide the facts upon which the denial is made. Couldn't do it because I was completely based in truth, fact, and valid law. So long story short, they never rebutted the affidavits. I had them to support my defense against their complaint. Well, we went through some months back and forth, and then they shifted. They got another lawyer. He started the same nonsense because the first one quit. I sent him an affidavit and never heard a word from him again. Then we go to court, and it was supposedly a third set of lawyers, but they never showed up at the day of trial. So the judge, who was not a nice man, who did not like me, did not like constitutionalists at all, the trial was set at 9 a.m. sharp. I was there at 8:45 with all my stuff ready to go, and we had about 20 of our students with us too to watch the trial. And the judge kept popping in and out of his room, back and forth, going into the clerk's office, coming back and looking very busy, but very distressed at the same time. Finally, about 25 after 9, he comes out and he said, could I see you for a minute, please? I said, sure. I got up and I went over to where he was standing. And he said, well, it doesn't appear that Metris is going to show. And I said, no, it doesn't. He said, well, given the circumstances and given the fact that you are here prepared to go and have presented all of your documentation and they have rebutted nothing, I have no choice, but I'm going to have to go ahead and dismiss this case. And I said, yes, you are. And he said, well, okay, then that's what we'll do. And I said, well, when can I have that in writing? And he said, would a couple of days be okay? I said, sure, that's fine. I'll come by and pick it up in a couple of days. Thank you. And so we all went out for breakfast afterwards and had a good laugh over it. Well, things went fine for what, a few months, and then I get another motion from this other set of attorneys, which one of our friends called the pit bulls, because they were these really knockdown, drag out group from Albuquerque. And they were trying to get the judge to set aside his order, to reverse it and set it aside and reopen the case. And I said, I'm not going to respond, because if I do, I'm engaging. The case has been closed. It's decided. So if I open up the box again by responding to this, I'm going to be back into hot water again.
Because you're contracting back in.
That's right. So
Yeah.
So what I did was file a notice with the court, informing the court of what took place, whatever. And I said, I'm not going to engage. So the day of the hearing comes, and again, this woman was supposed to be there in person, but she ended up having to go to Utah at the last minute. So she started with her song and dance on the phone, and we're sitting in this little tiny hearing room, and the judge is listening for the first maybe 30 seconds or so. And he said, well, okay, stop right there. I have something I want to say. He went through in probably 3 minutes, the whole structure of the case, what happened. Okay. And when he was done, and he said, and I made my ruling based upon this. Okay. He said, Metros might have a problem here, but their problem is not with Miss Edwards. Their problem is with their lawyers. It's not with Miss Edwards.
The three different sets of lawyers.
Yeah, three different sets of attorneys. He said, I'm not changing my ruling. My ruling stands. He said, this case is over and done with, and we're done here. Bang, hit the gravel. That was it. So I said, thank you. Have a nice day. And off we went. So needless to say, Metros probably spent, according to one of my friend's estimates, a good $75,000 on lawyers.
If not more.
Against little old me. Okay. Because I stood on my rights. I stood on the Constitution, and I stood on the power and the strength of an unrebutted affidavit. And believe me, it was tedious, and it was a pain in the butt to do all the work, but I did it because I knew I was in the right. I didn't flinch. And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Now, Metros was one of the strongest holding corporations in the country at that time. Yeah. Okay. I think it was the fourth largest holding corporation. So. Anyone who goes against Metros hires lawyers. We don't deal with lawyers. We didn't have lawyers. Margy spoke for herself and won based upon the power and the authority of the Constitution. That's the only way we and our people go, the power and the authority of the national Constitution, the original organic Constitution. Yeah. And very few people, frankly, I don't know anyone in the country that goes to court based upon the power and the authority of the Constitution. That's Most true. People who go to court hire attorneys. Mm-hmm. Well, attorneys, if they're bar attorneys, and most of them are beholden to the system, not to their client, okay? Right. So if it comes to a question as to who is going to benefit, the system or the client, the system benefits. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And as Margy said, the system looks at you as an incompetent if you hire an attorney, and you cannot speak for yourself. You can't say a word unless you're called upon, and most attorneys will not represent you properly. But this thing
isn't the bar, aren't they making an oath to, isn't it England? Because it's still, the bar is still associated with England.
Associated registry.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely. Yes. Unfortunately, the Bar Association has really corrupted the law in this country. It's no longer a lawful country because it is run by the bar, and all of this corporate commercial admiralty stuff has been oppressive to the people and pernicious to the people. And they don't realize that if they stayed with the Constitution, they could be outside of that loop, and they could hold the public officials accountable and liable for damages because they're not upholding their oaths. They're taking public funds, but they're not upholding their public duties, so they're criminals.
No, we're not finished with the Metros case, okay? Shortly after this whole thing was dismissed and gone away, Harris, who was the judge, retired, okay? And he retired because he was forced out by the actions we took. And the governor of New Mexico at that time, Bill Richardson, helped us get this judge out. Now, you don't see too many governors willing to get judges out. But this guy, Harris, was bad news, okay? I won't go into the depth and the intricacies in which he was involved, but He was one of the most hated men in New Mexico,
Mm.
but he was the most powerful man in northern New
at
Mexico.
that time. Yeah.
And that's where the power in New Mexico resides. It's not down south, it's up north. And this guy was the king of the north. Well, we told people we were going to get him out of office, and they laughed at
They
us.
did.
They said, "No, you'll never get this guy out of office." We got him out of office.
They were
Okay.
stunned.
He retired because he was given a choice of either getting fired or retiring, and he retired.
And I know this because
About 15 years before
Early.
his time was
Yeah.
up.
I
Go
know.
Oh
ahead.
my
I know
gosh, that's fantastic.
because I got a phone call one day. See, we filed this huge file outlining all of the unconstitutional actions that the judge had committed. Even though he ruled for me, I think he thought I was going to go
No,
away.
no, we don't go
And
that
just
way.
before my case ended, we put out 3,600 flyers all over town exposing him with what he'd done to me, and other people added their 2 cents to it too. And I put these flyers up everywhere.
And this was during the
during the
trial.
trial.
During
Wow.
the
I
trial.
even put one on his car in the parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah, I did. I wish I was there to see his face when he got it. But anyway, bottom line is, I tried to get the local newspaper to publicize what was going on. And the woman was a friend of his and his wife's, and she refused. She said, "All I
Yeah.
have is your word." I said, "I've got a court record to show you here." She said, "Well, I can't just take that." I said, "Look, I know you're friends with them, but you have a duty to the public." She said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go there." I said, "Fine." So Jack and I contacted the people who had bought the newspaper like a couple of months before. They were out of Kentucky. We told them what was going on, and this woman refused to print this, and it was something that was important to the public. She was fired the following week, and 2 of her next level editors were fired too because they wouldn't.
Oh, I freaking love you guys.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And she was really ticked off with us because she thought that she was special and she was part of the elite group, and nobody was going to get to her. And interestingly enough, I get a call from a lawyer who is the advisor to the Judicial Standards Commission, which is the people to whom we filed the complaint. And he asked me if I were a lawyer. I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, you really know a lot about the law. How did you learn?" I said, "I can read, I've got common sense." He said, "Well, he said, I want to tell you," he said, "I've seen a lot of cases come in here, but I've never seen one that was as thoroughly documented as this one." I said, "Good." And he said, "But I want to tell you something." He said, "This whole thing boils down to an old boys network." I said, "Okay, what do you mean? Where are you going with this?" And he said, "Well," he said, "unless a judge is like seen, physically murdering somebody or in some kind of sexual compromised position or whatever," he said, "the old boys don't like to rattle the cage. But what they do, instead of kicking him out, they'll appeal to his sensibilities and say, look, if this goes further and she sues you, it's going to make us all look bad. So why don't you just go ahead and take an early retirement and save everybody the problems?" And it's a veiled threat is what it is. So he knew that his options were slim to none. So he took the early retirement and announced it in the newspaper that he was retiring to read science fiction, garden, and play with his model trains. Okay. 15 years before he would have normally retired anyway. And after he retired, hundreds of letters came to the newspaper.
Thousands.
Complaining of the things that guy had done to them when he was acting as judge. Okay.
And they were all published.
And they were published because the newspaper felt an obligation after they denied me the truth. So they published them anyway. And it was really a fun time for us. He deserved it.
So ladies and gentlemen, the power and the authority of the Constitution is alive and well. But if you don't use it, okay, it's not going to help you. You have to really understand your rights. And as you said, Michelle, it would be best for your listeners, if they're really interested in learning their rights. And our objective has always been to restore constitutional governance to this country. Well, one of the ways you restore constitutional governance to America is for people to learn what their rights are.
Yeah.
And this series we're doing will show you how you can learn your rights and learn how to enforce your rights upon reluctant government. And we really need to do that because right now we're in the periphery of the communist hellhole and ready to descend right into the bowels of that hellhole. And let me tell you you asked about what will happen. Well, there are certain things that will happen, but that depends upon what the American people do. If the American people do not stop this insanity, this criminality, this treason that's taking place in every government across this nation,
Yeah.
federal, state, and local. What is happening to the Palestinians now, and I think a lot of you know what's happening to them, they're getting raped, sodomized, killed, murdered, tortured. Their kids are being destroyed, thrown into jail. And every major government in the world, except for the Arab countries, support this. They support it. Well, my God, if every major country supports this, when the communists take over, America will be deep in the bowels of that communist hellhole. And what is happening to the Palestinians now, and what happened to the Russians during the Bolshevik Revolution, in which the Bolsheviks killed over 100 million Russians, tortured most of them to death in the most cruel, hideous, imaginable ways possible, will happen to the American people. It will happen. And that's a guarantee, okay? Because if the people don't stop it, they are not stopping the evil that rules and controls them. And evil will do whatever the hell evil wants.
Absolutely.
So that's a guarantee right there.
Well, on that note, what do you guys think about Lahaina? And I know that it was attacked on Maui because there was weather modification. We have this, we have the satellite images that literally show these clouds that look like a wave going right to the Hawaii Islands and then stopping. And that doesn't happen. That's not how clouds work. And so there's so many things. We actually wrote to the police commissioner complaining about the police chief, which we have numerous testimonies and video that show they were blocking the exits from people leaving. They literally murdered these people.
We saw those as well.
So
they died.
Yep.
The commissioner, the police commissioner, I wrote back and said there wasn't enough evidence. So now our next step is going to the ethics board of ethics against the police commissioner to say he's not, investigating this, but what else can we do? Because that was an attack.
Well, first of all, okay, it was an attack by the Jewish government against the people of Lahaina. Now, I told you we lived in Maui for a while, okay? We did seminars throughout Hawaii. We love that area, and Lahaina was one of our favorite little towns. It's utterly destroyed. The people have been decimated, killed. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell your audience. They know what happened there. But do they know that their own government did it with DEWs? Okay, directed energy weapons. Okay, they wiped the people out because they considered the people less than garbage.
Yes.
The American government has no love for the American people at all. If we look at the history of what happened to the Indian, that is going to happen to us, okay? If we allow this to happen, what's going on in Gaza right now, what happened to the American Indian and what happened to the Russians under the hands of the Bolsheviks during that revolution will happen to the American people. But the American people, the vast majority of them, are totally blind. They don't see the existing reality right in front of them, okay? Now, when this happened, we knew exactly what happened and why it happened. We knew it instantaneously. We didn't have to have anyone convince us. We knew it, okay? We've seen it all our lives. I mean, what happened in Paradise?
My mother's from Chico, 30 minutes north, south. I went to Paradise.
You understand, it's the same premise.
It's the same thing. I went through the neighborhoods, ash, and then a white picket fence. And then a house completely intact. And then another house in ash. And I was just like, this is,
It's not a wildfire. But the thing is, what happens, and I don't want to belabor the point here, but people don't know what they can do because everyone's looking at the effect and they're not looking at how can I counter that effect. Now, they say, oh, well, there's not enough evidence.
Of course, there's evidence.
Can I say something, please?
Go ahead.
If the people who were witnesses to what the police did, okay, corralling everybody in, were to write affidavits of truth and declarations stating what they saw, what happened, who was impacted, who the officer was, every detail that they can remember. And they sent that to the officer, and they sent it to the chief of police and to the commissioner, okay? Letting them
Okay.
know that they're telling them somebody under your watch committed a crime. It was unconstitutional. It violated our rights to life, liberty, property, whatever, okay? And you have to do something about it, or you're complicit in the crime.
Yeah.
Might have been a little more inclined to say, okay, we'll throw the cop under the bus and we'll make it his fault, okay? But when no one has anything with teeth, they don't do anything. They just push it down the can down the road, so to speak. You have to speak with authority, and an affidavit is the best way to do that, because it's a document that you can hold over their heads. They won't be able to rebut it with any facts, truth, law. They won't say anything, so they will tacitly admit. Then you can take that to a higher level. You can sue them. You can file criminal complaints, but you have to have something with teeth, and the affidavits is the best way to have the teeth to do the job.
Right after Lahaina happened, one of our good friends from Oahu flew over to Maui and went through Lahaina with some people, okay? And we told him, and this fellow attended our seminars years ago when we presented them in Hawaii.
Been a friend ever since.
Yeah. We said, look, Doug, the best way to help the people is to get the people right now to write affidavits. And he knows exactly what the affidavit is, because he used the affidavit to win a federal case against him, okay, in federal court. And the Army was prosecuting him in federal court. Well, this is in Hawaii. You know, Hawaii is a federal district. It's basically a dictatorship run by the military. He used the affidavit and he won in federal court against the Army, okay? Other people in Hawaii have used our affidavit to win cases that never could have been won without the use of that affidavit, okay? The affidavit is very, very powerful. Doug knows the affidavit. He tried to interest people in the affidavit. We wrote to our list in Hawaii, I don't know, 200 or 300 people about the affidavit and how they could use the affidavit to help the people of Lahaina and explain the affidavit to the people of Lahaina. You know how much interest there was from the people? None. Zero. Now, this affidavit has won, I think we lost count after 10,000 plus cases over 70 years, okay?
Wow.
No one has won that many cases ever. Why? Because it's based in the power and the authority of the Constitution.
Gosh.
But the people are not willing to help themselves. You know, everyone wants us to do the work for them, okay? We'll tell them how to do it. They'll say, well, will you do it because you know better than I? You know, do my case for me. That happens all the time. You know, 99+% of the people who come to us want us to solve their problem and do their work for them. We can't do that. We'd be working 24 hours a day, okay?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is we presented this to the people of Hawaii. Now, we presented it as best we could because we don't have access to the vast majority of people on Maui or throughout Hawaii. But we presented it to enough people who we thought would take some action based upon the affidavit. Now, are you familiar with Akahi? Akahi in Maui?
No, I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Okay, well, he's want to explain it. He's one of the
descendants of Kamehameha and considered the rightful heir, okay, to Maui. And is a very nice man who's kind of been embroiled with contradictory attitude from some people who think somebody else is the rightful heir. And what we're trying to get people to do is put all of that stuff aside for now and look at the circumstances that you're facing, which is absolute ruin.
Yeah.
Stealing of your land, okay, and everything that you held dear by a thieving criminal communist government.
Yes.
Operating to deliberately hurt the people. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't, oh, there was a screw up here and a mistake. No, that was all planned.
Yes, absolutely.
To show that it's far beyond any coincidence the way this thing took place. And this is what people should have done. They should be documenting this stuff and writing affidavits, using this as supportive documentation to what they personally experienced, saw, okay, and had done to them. This is the only way that they're going to get anywhere, because there's no one in office that's going to support the people. None of them. They're always the same evil empire. It's evil.
Look, after we were unsuccessful with getting anyone in Hawaii, anyone, anywhere,
Gosh.
and taking any action by and through the power and the authority of the affidavit and the Constitution, we went to Akahi. Now, we knew him years ago when we were dealing in Maui, but we went to his counsel. I forget her name, Veronica Fibres, I believe. We went to his counsel and spoke with her. And she said, well, that sounds very good. Let me take a look at the affidavit. We sent her the affidavit, haven't heard from her since, okay? There's something awfully wrong with the people of America who don't want to help themselves solve problems, because most people, if not all people, want someone else to solve their problem for them, okay? Now, let me explain what an affidavit is, because many people might not know what it is. And our affidavit, the one we've devised, is the most powerful in the history of affidavit writing, okay? Because what it does is make statements to our opponent, let's say the police chief, okay? Make statements to the police chief that are based in truth, fact, law, and evidence, okay? And we're saying to him in the affidavit, this is the truth, okay? These are the facts. If you disagree with this truth and these facts, then state your disagreement and your rebuttal to our affidavit by means of your own sworn and notarized affidavit, and support your rebuttal with true fact, law, and evidence. Yeah. Well, the charges in our affidavit are based in truth, fact, law, and evidence. So it's impossible for the one who receives the affidavit to rebut our affidavit and based on the truth, fact, law, and evidence. Over the years, I don't know how many affidavits we and our people have written, but I'd say it's well over 100,000, well over. Wow. 70 years, you know, we've dealt with a lot of, we've dealt with millions of people, okay? So it could be millions of affidavits, but I'm saying on the low end, probably 100,000 or more. You know how many have been rebutted? Zero.
Wow.
Zero. Okay, well, when we have the affidavit that we write, with the warnings to our opponent, okay? Again, that if he doesn't rebut it, all right, he's admitting to everything contained in that affidavit.
That's right.
Fully binding upon him in any court in America without his protest, objection, or that of those who represent him. Now, the courts theoretically convene to hear the truth and to resolve controversies. So what are we doing in our affidavit? We're telling the truth, and we're giving our opponent his opportunity to rebut that truth by means of his own sworn and notarized affidavit. He won't do so, okay? Well, if we have to go to court, an unrebutted affidavit stands as fact and truth before the court. And since we've presented the truth that's not rebutted by our opponent, okay, then that creates a lack of controversy. There's no controversy between us and our opponent. If our opponent admits to everything we're saying, there's no controversy, okay? And since he hasn't rebutted the truth, our truth stands as evident in fact before the court. Court has no choice but to grant us the decision, whether we're the plaintiff or we're the defendant. And this is how we have won so many thousands of cases, and our people have won so many thousands of cases. But today, the American people don't want to use the affidavit because they want everyone else to do the work for them. Now, I'm urging the people of Hawaii, the people listening to this, to take the law into your own hands and use the power and the authority of our affidavit against those people in government who are oppressing you, and they are oppressing you.
Absolutely.
They consider you garbage. They consider you less than garbage. Now, if you want, we'll send you our affidavit.
Please, 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 please. Yeah, email it to me and I'll put it in the description below. And is there a time limit on sending the affidavit?
We give 30 days. Usually, we give 30 days.
Between the events that happen. No,
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Reasonably, one would want to do it sooner rather than later, so that your memory is as fresh as possible. Okay. It's important to keep your memories fresh. And it's a good idea when you're putting an affidavit together to make a list of things that took place. And then you can refine how you want to state what happened. And you're grounded in your rights guaranteed to you in the Constitution and in the duties that the public officials have to uphold your rights and uphold all aspects of the Constitution. So there's your foundational law, the valid law that supports what you're doing. You have the right to express yourself. You have the right to redress your grievances to government, guaranteed in the First Amendment. And an affidavit is a perfect way to express those grievances to government. Again, it's a sworn statement signed before a notary, so it becomes official. And the only thing that can rebut an affidavit is another sworn notarized affidavit. And again, they cannot rebut something because I'm based in truth, fact, valid law. So they can't be based in truth, fact, and valid law, can they? It's impossible. It's an absolute impossibility. So they don't do anything. At most, sometimes they'll have the clown attorney send a letter saying, oh, this isn't irrelevant, whatever. Doesn't mean anything. You didn't write to the attorney. You wrote to the police chief or the commissioner or whomever. Okay? And it was his duty to respond because you're directing your affidavit to him. And the statements and claims and charges you're making are against him, his action or lack thereof. It's not really very complicated. It's straightforward and it's extremely powerful if you use it and you use it with commitment.
Now, the difference between an affidavit and a notice is like from here going 27 trillion miles to Mars or someplace, okay? There's no comparison at all because the notice they consider garbage.
Yeah.
Why? Because it has no teeth. In law, you have to have legal weight, lawful weight. You have to have teeth. You have to have substance behind you, okay? If I make a claim and the claim is based in sand, I don't have any substance. But if I support my claim in truth, fact, law, and evidence, okay, based upon constitutional authority, I am supporting my claim. And that's what we do. We always support what we have. So if one is writing a letter of, let's say, anger, coming from anger, okay, emotion, an emotional letter, there's nothing wrong with anger, nothing wrong with emotion. But it has to be channeled in the correct way and presented correctly by and through an affidavit. And simply a notice or a letter gets thrown in the circular bucket, okay? They don't listen. But when you have people who write affidavits, especially in number, they listen, okay? I mean, we've won on our own, the two of us, against major governments across the country, okay?
Nice.
The two of us without any support, all right? Now, what if the two of us had support of millions of people who wrote affidavits in support of us, okay? Now, it's not only the two of us who are winning, it's the millions of people who are winning. So we need people across the country and across Maui and across Hawaii to support Lahaina, okay?
So that was my next question. Can people outside of Lahaina write affidavits and submit them, even though we don't have like proof, like we don't have the evidence of being there? But
it doesn't.
Okay, good.
It's the type of affidavit you write. Go ahead.
Yeah, what you can do in a situation like that, since you're not a direct witness to the events there, but you did see reports from people, okay?
Yes.
You did see films, and you looked at radar and this and that, and you can put down the facts that would support the theory that this was a deliberate attack. And you can put down the fact that you know from your observations that the aid wasn't forthcoming, it was blocked, people were corralled, whatever, that you can justify, and that you have a right as a citizen, okay, of this country and of Hawaii to expect that the public officials who are supposed to be serving the people will act pursuant to their oaths, and they will uphold the rights of those people pursuant to what the Constitution demands. They're not doing that. So they are not upholding their oaths, and that's perjury of oath, and that means that they are not fit to hold public office. All of that can be put into an affidavit.
Oh my gosh, this is so great. So also the fact that the governor is saying that it's climate change when over 1,600 scientists around the world say there's no climate emergency. I have numerous, so I can actually write an affidavit to that effect because I have a whole 2 videos of all the lies he wrote, he's stated, and I've rebutted like every single one of them.
Yeah, well, you can do that too, because that demonstrates that he is not upholding the rights of the people. He's dancing to the globalist tune. All of these guys were put in place for a reason. Let's face it.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that this police chief was at the
Yeah.
so-called shootings in Las Vegas. All of this is part of their global domination plan. They're very meticulous in their plans, and they don't expect the people to do anything because the people have been passive, they've
Yeah.
been complacent, they've had the mentality, and they have mistakenly given their personal inherent power away to figures that don't deserve to have any authority over them at all because they perjured their constitutional oaths. It's really that simple. They don't.
So after the affidavit is sent, we give them 30 days. They don't respond. Then is that a lawsuit happen after that, or what happens next?
You could file a lawsuit. Yes, you could also file criminal charges too. Okay.
Yes, you could.
Because what they've done is criminal.
Look,
Absolutely.
there's a whole structure in the affidavit, okay? Let's say you're writing to the police chief, all right? He's the police chief, but he has people who are above him, okay?
Yeah.
So we write if we were you, okay, we would write a letter to the police chief, not a letter, an affidavit, okay? But we would also write letters to his oversight and supervisory personnel. Well, who are his personnel, the oversight personnel? Well, it would be the people who run the town, the mayor,
Commissioner, the mayor,
the city council,
For sure.
the
Yeah.
county government,
Yeah.
whatever it
Whoever
may
it is,
be.
yeah.
Whoever his supervisory personnel are, we write letters, affidavits to them as well. And we send them their own affidavit addressed directly to them, okay, as supervisory personnel with a responsibility to correct any unconstitutional action that is taking place under their watch. They have the duty and responsibility to do that. And if they don't do that, then they are complicit in and support, uphold, okay, aid and abet the unconstitutional actions. All right. So we write to the chief, we write to the supervisory personnel. So when and if a suit becomes necessary, we sue all of them. Okay. All of them, not just the police chief.
Okay.
All right. Now, when you're doing something like this and you go to court, as I said before, your affidavit stands as fact and truth before the court. As we both said, the only thing that can rebut an affidavit is a rebuttal affidavit based in truth, fact, law, and evidence. Well, it's evident, as we've said, and we're repeating, if we're based in truth, fact, law, and evidence, no one can rebut us in his affidavit and support that rebuttal affidavit in truth, fact, law, and evidence. So he doesn't even respond. This is why we get no responses at all, okay?
Yeah.
Now, when you go to court, again, the unrebutted affidavit stands as fact and truth before the court. And as I've said before, but just to repeat, we are presenting our truth by and through the affidavit. We're basing everything in truth, fact, law, and evidence. So we're supporting truth. We are showing what happened, okay? If our opponent disagrees with us, disagrees with our truth or the truth, then he has the chance to rebut it. But he won't do so because he can't. Therefore, our truth stands as fact before the court. And since the court is there to determine the truth, facts, and resolve controversies, and since our opponent admits to the truth, admits to our fact, there's no controversy. Therefore, there's no controversy for the court to hear, so the victory is always ours. Well, let's say you have 5,000 people in Hawaii who do this in affidavits to every official in sight, okay? Can you think of what could happen in the courts in Hawaii?
Be major.
But we can't do it. We're here. We're in Arkansas, okay? We used to live there, but we don't live there anymore. So it's up to the people of Hawaii. Now, we'll send you that affidavit, but you also can get it for the people listening on the Michelle Moore Show website, Michelle Moore Show website, okay? And we've done probably 15 or 20 different episodes with Michelle Moore, which covers quite a bit of ground if people want to turn into those episodes and download it.
I'll put the link in the description as well for people to take a look at, as well
Very
as your site, because it's quite amazing.
Well,
Well, you
thank
guys, I just say thank you so much for all of this. And
you.
any last words? I usually do a prayer afterwards. So is there anything last things you're going to say? Thank you so much. This was great. It's exactly what I was hoping to get, because I've been yeah, my heart is just with the people there, and my guess is, anyway, I don't need to talk story about that, but any last things before we do a quick prayer and then send you guys on your way and with aloha?
The
Awesome.
people will wake up to the inherent power that they have, the divine spirit that is in them that should be calling to them. They have to get quiet and listen to that spirit, because if we as a people don't rise up against this evil is going to overpower and take us down.
Yes.
And I don't want that. I don't think you do. And I think your viewers don't want that either. So that's what we hope, that they will wake up and take lawful action and use the affidavit as their means of doing so.
You asked what will happen in the future. Well, I wrote a book, Margy and I wrote a book. It's called Bypass the Banks. And it's available on Amazon and it's available everywhere. And we wrote it because of the last economic disaster that took place in this country that was planned by the government. Okay. And something like 27 million people, over 27 million people were foreclosed upon. Over 20 million lost their homes. Over 20 million people lost their homes, and people are still losing their homes. This is why we wrote the book, to help them understand that when the next disaster happens, there are other ways you can finance and buy and sell property without going to banks. You can do it directly, whether you want to buy a house that has a mortgage or not, you can buy that house directly if you have the capability, the financial capability, without the bank. And we describe that in the book. What will happen in this country if the American people do not wake up is the end of America, the absolute end of America. There will be nothing left. We will have fighting in the streets. We will have people killing people, okay? We'll have government killing the people. We'll have government torturing the people. We will have economic violence like you won't believe. People will be starving. It will be an absolute chaos, okay? Now, the people of Gaza have tried to help themselves, but they were outnumbered. But at least they fought back in the past. They fought back, but they were outnumbered. The American people have never fought back.
Never.
The American people as a society have never once opposed the evil that this government does, never once. Now, there are some people, some groups, there's always exceptions to the rule. Some people, some groups over the years have tried, okay? We give them credit. Most of them have not used the Constitution when they tried. They used the laws, rules, and regulations promulgated and created by government, given to the people, designed to defeat government.
Which is an oxymoron.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, your enemy is not going to give you its game plan before the game, okay? It
Right.
just doesn't work that way. But the American people haven't figured out that the only way to defeat government is in large numbers, using the power and the authority of the Constitution. And if we don't do that, we will be in an absolute hell in this country. If you don't think of yourselves, think of your kids, think of your grandkids, think of the little babies that were just born. What is it going to be like for them? So we urge all Americans listening to this to wake up to reality.
Snap out of the spell.
Yeah, and it is a spell, that is for sure.
It is.
Well, thank you so much. Let's just do a quick prayer. Great Spirit, infinite intelligence of all things. We know that you live inside every single human being on this planet, that your intelligence is beating our hearts and breathing our bodies and running billions of processes through the body. And we know that each person who has come to this world at this time has chosen to be here for this human game, this human journey that we're on. And we just ask for the courage to do what is right, not what is easy, but what is right, what is our kuleana, what is ours to do, that we each know it in the gut of our bodies, that we are pulled to doing, to taking action, and to following our guided intuition of doing what we know is each of our kuleana, it's each of our job to do at this present time. And we know that this war is a spiritual war of evil and of light, of good and of evil. And we know that this good has won in the future sometime, and we see it now in the present moment. We see that this world is free. We see that the darkness is dissipating, that the actors, the evil actors that call themselves governors and police chiefs and mayors and world elites, that they are being removed from office in a peaceful way, in a constitutional way that is freeing all people. We ask for inner strength for the Palestinian people and the Israeli people to hold inner strength and hope in their heart that their land can be free, that land can be vibrant and energized and harmonious in unity of loving people that are already there. We know that this evil cannot stand forever, and we now put the extreme light of love on all the evil places. And just like cockroaches run when the light turns on, they are running, but will be held accountable. They are leaving office, and that this world is free. And it is free through each one of us that stands up for our constitutional freedoms and does what we know to be right. And we are so grateful for the courage and the inner strength that it takes and the tenacity that it takes to be here at this time. Because we have said yes. We have said yes at a higher plane. Our higher selves had said yes before we were even born. And we say yes now. We say yes now in the knowingness that each one of us is guided, each one of us is protected, and each one of us is bringing forth truth, freedom, sovereignty, and absolute harmony back to this beautiful Aina, to this beautiful planet. And we say, so it is. And we send Margy and we send Jack so much aloha and mahalo. We mahalo them right now with so much gratitude, so that they just know and they just feel the feeling of aloha throughout their entire lives, and their so much gratitude for their courage and their tenacity to go through this time and bring so much truth to the people of this country. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for their journey. And thank you for their students, for their courage to stand up. And we know that the future students, the present students, have what it takes to bring forth back freedom and unity and harmony and peace to this world. And it is absolutely done. And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you so much.
Thank
One more, that was absolutely wonderful. One more thing I will add, our website is citizensoftheamericanconstitution.net. And if you would post that, we would appreciate
Yes,
it.
that'll
Thank you
be
so
the
much.
first link in the description. Absolutely, you guys. So take a look at the description, click on that first link. It will astound you, and do their course. Do their course. I've started their course, and it's really easy to follow and really informative. So definitely take their course, you
free.
guys.
And it's
And it's
free.
free, and it's
Yeah.
free. But send them a donation. Send them a donation, because they definitely
Donations are
earn it.
wonderful, but it's free.
Yes, but it's free for all
We'd
people.
like everyone to see that, everyone. Thank you very
Awesome.
much,
Mahalo.
Michelle.
All right. Mahalo and aloha, everybody.
Be well. Bye-bye.